All right, this is a pretty dramatic story, but again, as always, this isn't about glorifying shit because I sit here at 36 years old, having to live with these decisions, having to. When I tell these stories, I genuinely feel sick. My heart races, and I relive some of the things that I was going through before, during, and after these incidences. It's not easy to accept some of these things, but for me, it's about projecting positivity through the story by using it as an educational tool to explain to others how you get to that point, how you get to the point where you'll put yourself in positions that are absolutely detrimental to your mental health, your physical health, and your emotional stability overall. So please don't ever think because I laugh or I smile or I get elevated telling the story that because this is something that's been happening quite regularly, younger people are messaging me going, "Oh, love that story, man, it was sick, oh, it must have been crazy." Yeah, crazy, retarded, spastic. Crazy as in dumb as me, dumb as dog shit, crazy. Yeah, absolutely. I will never glorify any of the things that I've done because I have to sit and live with absolute guilt, shame, and regret now, having become a much better version, the best version of myself, completely drug-free. I now have emotions and feelings, and like I said, I only have to tell these stories and I relive those emotions and feelings that I never had back then. But I have them now. I know what I was feeling back then, but did I actually feel it? No, because drugs and mental health and all these things were prevalent in my life, unaddressed and not working in my favour. So, again, I'll try to keep them short because I know it's hard for people. We've all got lives, and you don't want to be sitting around watching hour-long videos. But so basically, at the age of, I was 15 or 6. No, I was 15 actually, because I recall how my 16th birthday went. I'll get to that video in a couple of days, I suppose. So at 15 years of age, I'd obviously been through the detention centre for the last 4.5 years. 4 days over 11 was how old I was when I first went to Ashley. So, yeah, I myself and 2 other boys from Hobart, we'd gotten to a point where, the detention centre was a different place back then. It basically they'd employed staff that they thought were going to be able to control us. Now, when I say control us, I mean physically, not like intellectually, emotionally, or as a social worker or a youth worker as they are, should have been trained to do. They were basically employed. They must have been just rushed through the induction process and the standard process of vetting people to make sure that they're the appropriate kinds of people to work with children, because some of these men and some of the things that happened in the years and weeks and months leading up to just this event, this is the thing, I hate it because I can give, people have to actually remind me of things from Ashley's, because as time goes on, and I've said this in previous videos, when you repeatedly stack traumatic, violent, aggressive, explosive incident on top of one another, they gradually get worse and worse and worse. They don't get less and less and less. So your mind will suppress the less serious ones, the less funny ones at the time. They were funny to us, and we found some parts and aspects of these incidences amusing, if not exciting, and always unbelievable. But like, yes, we'd find it exciting and shit we'd talk about and make jokes and laugh and say, "Oh, what about this? What about that? What about when we done that? Oh, I can't believe that." Like, but sitting here now as an adult, it's just like, if I seen any young person or adult conducting themselves in that way, my first question as an intellect, someone that is actually smart, I'm going to say, "What's going on in your life, mate?" Or "What's going on in your life, girl? Like, why are you doing this to yourself?" When people are making conscious decisions to put themselves in harmful situations and make their situation worse, more so, that's the big key. Yeah, someone has to ask the question, what's happened in your life, what's going on in your life, and what are you feeling, thinking, and believing to make you make these decisions, because they're clearly detrimental to your health, detrimental to your future, detrimental to your surroundings. It's just negative outcome after negative outcome based off decisions that you consciously make. So yeah, the real question is, why do you feel that way? Why do you believe that this is making life for you any better? Because it never was. That's the reality of it. So me and my two mates had gotten to a point where we were unit bound. We weren't allowed to leave the unit. So yes, we were coming out of ourselves, but we weren't allowed outside. We weren't allowed to go to the gymnasium. We were just unit bound, as they called it back then. There was a good like, I'm not saying we were unit bound because they just wanted to fucking starve us of vitamin D. That wasn't the case. All of us had escaped multiple times in the years leading up to this. All of us had countless restraints. By restraints, I mean that's where staff will say, okay, you broke that window, or you broke that table tennis bat, or it's simply bedtime, let's go to bed. It's time for you to go back to your cell till the next day. And we'd simply say, fuck you, no, we're not going back. And we'd force them to have to physically remove us from wherever we was to put us wherever they wanted us to go. That's what we call being restrained, or a restraint. We just got to a point in our lives where we were so consumed and believed so strongly in who we was that we'd ask for unreasonable things, make unreasonable and unlikely demands, and put ourselves in a position repeatedly and consistently over time where the only outcome was one word, no, and one action, getting restrained. Now, why would children at the age, we were all 15, 16, all three of us, why would children that age, this is the question that people should have been asking back then, why would children that age repeatedly put themselves in a situation and a scenario that only ends with them being choked unconscious, having people hold them down and scream in their face repeatedly to stop you from resisting and trying to fight back and get back up to your feet and punch and kick and bite and spit and threaten their families, threaten their children out of pure rage, not because we would ever hurt a child, but because that was the quickest way to induce violence. If you threaten someone's kid, of course they're going to get aggressive with you, especially if they're already getting aggressive with you. They got you pinned down and you're saying horrible, unthinkable things about their families and their children especially. Don't you think someone should have once just sat back and said, there's something wrong with these children? Why are they behaving like this? Why do they speak like that when we're already assaulting them or restraining them or hurting them or choking them, and they still persist on saying horrible, nasty things and inducing more violence on themselves? That would be the question I would ask. And I'm not a rocket scientist. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a social worker. It's just critical thinking on a basic level, isn't it? Like, that's what I think anyway. And that's what I think anyway. But yes, we had come to such a point where we believed so strongly in who we was, and this is the unfortunate fact that I want to highlight. All three of us had adult-aged idols, people we looked up to, people that communicated with us while we were in a detention centre from prison, which is something that I want to stress here right now. That should be a no-go. So detention centres all across the country, if you're under the age of 18, even 21, because other detention centres around the country have people in there up to 21 years of age, that should be a definitive no. If you're a youth offender locked in a youth facility, you should not be allowed to receive mail from prison, phone calls or communication from any prison. Yes, people's fathers are in jail and their sons and daughters are in detention centres. So obviously you can't remove that kind of communication. But there needs to be some system put in place where cousins and friends and brothers and, shit like that. No. If it's father, son, mother, son, daughter, whatever, that's a different dynamic. You do not break up that bond of father, daughter, mother, daughter, whatever. When it's a parent and a child, that's a different thing. There's obviously got to be some way to make that communication stay in place. But in terms of other people, like I had this is an example, 12 years old, like I'm 15 in this story I'm about to tell, but 12 years old, I literally had several of our state's worst offenders being allowed to walk into the detention centre and come and fucking visit me in front of all the other kids. Like, they'd be sitting there, like, idolising me because they'd see some of the cunts that they've heard the names of for years sitting there visiting me, dressed like criminals, fucking tattoos all up their necks, fucking, you know what I mean? Do you know how retarded that is? Like, anyway, yeah, that's something that we were, you know, unfortunately being misguided and guided by the fact that we had adult age males in Risdon, one jail, one detention centre in our state. Of course, that was an ego thing for us. We're sitting there as the state's worst youth offenders, doing some of the worst shit in our detention centre in our state when we were out. And yet we'd go to the place where we're meant to be getting rehabilitated, treated, and getting therapy and, you know, trying to make us come back into the community better juveniles. So why would they let us communicate with our state's worst known offenders that are actually in jail? The letters come saying, this is such and such from Risdon Prison. And the letters I used to get, you got no idea. Like, these men would be down there writing me letters, talking about me joining their gangs, talking about me getting their tattoo brands for their gang they run and shit like that. Like, I'm 12 years old, I'm 13 years old, 14, 15, 16, it doesn't matter. If you're a child, that kind of behaviour is fucking disgusting. It's unacceptable. You do not guide young people down that path, no matter how you're doing it. Whether you're giving them stuff for free that they can't afford and their families can't buy them, whether you're rocking up to their house and taking them when they're 12, 11, 13. These are examples of my own life. Taking them out of their household and driving them around in stolen cars while they break into other houses and businesses and teaching you things that you shouldn't learn. Anyway, we'll get back to the story. I just have so much that I need to... I won't lie, like, even in Thailand, I started getting politically motivated because this shit is so deeply embedded in our culture and our country, and especially our detention centres and our jail systems, that until someone with a fucking brain on their head comes along and says, hey, geniuses, there's so many little things that I can highlight that I experienced that kids and men and women are going through right now, the exact same shit, and wondering why we have a failed system. Anyway, right. I get elevated over this shit because, like, it's hard for me, as much as I take full accountability for what I did, the decisions I made, and the choices that I have to live with. Sometimes I really struggle to sit there and believe that there was no one in my environment, in the detention centres or the prisons or anywhere, that was able to see through the fucking bullshit and go, well, maybe if you stop this, remove that, limit this, and stop them from doing that, we could actually have an impact. But, like, yeah. So, basically, we'd gotten to such a point where we were hating life that much, being locked in this unit, never allowed outside, never allowed to go to the gym, not allowed to do sports, couldn't go to the weight room, weren't allowed to go to school. We weren't allowed to leave the unit. And we just decided, based off everything that had happened, we were going to put an end to that. And, like, obviously, we weren't as smart as I am sitting here now, because what I'm about to outline clearly didn't get us out of the unit. It got us locked in ourselves for months on end. We decided that I went to the nurses one day. This was weeks or months before. And I'd managed to steal 2 1 ml syringes, brand new in the packet, from the nurses station. And we kept them stashed in the unit for ages. Had them there just for whatever reason, we didn't really know, but we knew, you know, a needle full of blood was a massive deterrent to anyone that understood what they were looking at, especially when you're in a detention centre full of kids and some people, adults, that have got blood-borne viruses that if you catch them, you get pricked with that needle. It's basically attempted murder, because you are giving someone a lifelong disease that will kill them young. And we acknowledged that, we knew that, so it was a weapon for us. Having those needles was a weapon. And eventually decided that we were going to take over the officers' station and have a standoff, have a siege. And we got the detainees that were going outside to bring back in whatever they could, boulders, rocks, lumps of wood, anything they could bring back inside to us. We demanded that they did. And basically one of the detainees went out and come back in with a fucking piece of wood about a metre long, yay wide, yay thick. And then we had everything we needed. We had the needle, we had the bit of timber, and there was 3 of us that were prepared to do whatever it took to get into the officers' station and take it over. Basically, within 5 minutes of the detainees coming back inside from their outside time, we had the lump of wood, and one of us 3 drew our blood out of our arms with the needle. And we just laid siege upon that office. We literally just come over the counters, holding the needle out clearly so they could see what it was. You got to understand, like I said, some of these staff were fucking 6'2", 110 kilo. We're 15-year-old, no taller than 5'10", 11 boys at the time. 65 kilo, 70 kilo at most. And that needle and bit of wood was what got us, the control of that office, because at the end of the day, no one's stupid enough to fuck around with someone waving around a dirty needle. Unless they've already got all the bloodborne viruses in the world, you know what I mean? So, basically, one of the boys that come into the office smacked one of the workers because he didn't have the needle, he had the wood and whatnot, and the staff member tried to come at him, and he's just gone fucking smack. Hit him with the bit of wood, dropped him. We've gone into the office, all the staff have cleared out of the way of the control panel at the front of the office, outside the office. And the moment we got into the office, we slammed the door, and from having been there for years, we knew so many little things about the standing operating procedures of the facility, the setup and design of the building, and especially their office. We had noted years before that anytime there was serious violence or uproar in the unit, the staff that were not, especially women, the staff that were not physically capable of engaging us or taking part in restraints or things like that, if they got scared or worried, they would fly back into the office, slam the door and go boom, boom, and lock these 2 deadbolts that were on the inside of the door so that you could no longer get in there with a key, you couldn't kick it in, it was just you were deadbolted in the office. And we observed this over years. So naturally, as soon as we got in the office, we slammed the door shut, bang, bang, hit the deadbolts, and then we were fucking high-fiving each other, cuddling each other. We were just on top of the world because we'd taken over the office. Little did we know, about 30 seconds into us high-fiving each other and cheering each other, we hear the toilet flush behind us in the office's toilet. And workers come out of there, and of course, there was 3 of us in the office, lump of wood, needle with blood in it, and we were already smashing shit at this point. We literally started just smashing the place the moment we knew we were in there safe. This officer's come out and basically got hesitant and was like, oh, get the fuck out, fuck it. And we've just, cocked a bit of wood back, pulled the needle out, and just basically said to the staff on the other side of the door, there's about 6 of them, they're trying to get in with their keys, smash their way in. And we just basically got him to come around and face the door and just basically put the needle and the bit of wood up and said, you either get back and let us get him the fuck out of here, or we'll just stick him with this needle. We never intended on doing that. I want to add that, as if we would do that. But it was definitely a weapon, in the sense that we knew how powerful having that needle full of blood was. None of them were going to go against anything we said if someone was at risk of being stuck with it. So we obviously unbolted the door, pushed him out, slammed the door shut, put the deadbolts back on. To keep the story short, because we're already at, 19 minutes, 30 seconds, I'll get a bit carried away with my ideas and systemic changes that need to be made in the system when I start telling these stories based off my own experiences. So, basically once we re-deadbolted that door, over the next 2 hours, over the next 5 minutes, they locked everyone else in their cell immediately, obviously. And within the next 5 to 10 minutes, we couldn't see outside that officer's station because there was 50, 60 staff just surrounding it, looking through every window, keeping an eye on what we were doing in there. We were making phone calls, smoking their cigarettes in there, smashing shit, doing whatever. Turned everyone's power on because the power board was in there, so they all had their TVs on in their cells, whether they were on the right colour or not, to have a TV in their room. It's a colour scheme that allows you red, orange, yellow, green. It used to be back when I was there. I'm not sure what it is now. But yeah, if you weren't on green, you didn't have a TV or power in your room to watch the TV that was up in a box. So yeah, we turned everyone's power on, changed everyone's colours on the board to green. Just, we were just being kids, fucking around doing shit that we weren't meant to do while we were in that office. And yeah, we ended up realising that the safe in the cupboard, where all the medication, all the contraband, everything that was meant to be protected, was in this safe. We had smashed this office to pieces, and because at this point we're 20 minutes, half hour in, they've rocked up, they've got blockbusters, crowbars, axes, you name it. They're going to they kept saying, if we don't stop, they're going to force their way in there. So again, now that they've got axes and fucking 6-foot long crowbars, we obviously had a quick conversation and said, if they get in here, we're all getting smashed. Because they're not going to risk us pulling that needle out again. We'll just get our arm broken with an axe or whatever. You know what I mean? They didn't fuck around back then. There was no, they're only boys, they're only children. Nah, mate. You put yourself in a position where they feel humiliated, overpowered, or like they have no control. Guess what? The moment they take control back, you'll fucking regret it. You will fucking regret it. There's none of this pin you down and, make you submit. They'll bash you into submission. They will choke you unconscious, and when you wake up, you'll be fucking handcuffed behind your back. Your feet will be cuffed, and you'll be cuffed from your hands to your feet, and they'll be fucking choking you, smashing, yeah. So we had a quick conversation and basically said, how are we going to stop them from smashing their way in here now that they've got all these weapons and tools and there's 60 of them? We're in a very small space, a 4 metre by 4 metre room with a bench, like a big L bench, cupboards behind you, and a little area for a toilet and sink and shit. We didn't have much. It's not very big. So we knew if they got in there, if they broke a window out or they done anything, we were fucked. So yeah, we had a quick conversation and decided that the only way we were going to prevent them from smashing their way in the next 5 minutes was if we just ripped everything from, smashed everything we could, got all the paper out of the printer, all the files out of the cupboard, all the toilet paper out of anything that would would catch fire immediately if we lit it. Because as I said, we're in there smoking their cigarettes out of their personal jackets and using the landline, using their mobiles. We were just, being cunts. But yeah, long story short, we stacked everything up like a teepee in the middle of the room, and we just kept, every time they kept putting the crowbar in, we'd just get down on our hands and then say, fucking, you break that door open, we're going to set fire to this place. And that obviously kept preventing them from trying to break in there, because if we flicked that lighter once, mind you, all three of us have flooded cells by setting off sprinkler systems, set fire to cells out of fits of rage while we're in the cunts. We weren't, they knew that we weren't fucking around, is the point I'm making. They knew that if we say, don't smash your way in here because we'll set fire to this shit, they knew there was a 50-50 chance that we would fucking set fire to it. Whether we were in there with it or not, it didn't matter. We had demonstrated over years that we were all unstable, that we did not think far enough ahead to consider all options. Well, you do, and I did especially, but as I've spoken about, when you are mentally unwell, you're not medicated, and you've been through the kind of shit that all three of us had, you don't give a fuck. You're not thinking, if I set fire to that, we're either going to have to run out of here ourselves and surrender, or we're going to burn to death, choke to death, or just die because of smoke inhalation, whatever. But long story short, because we prevented them from smashing their way in there by threatening to set fire to everything, we turned our attention to the safe, which was bolted in the wall, in the cupboard, behind this big locked thing. And a lot of people will sit there and say, bullshit. But again, just about every story I've told on this YouTube channel, whether it's in the detention centre or in the prison, or later on I'll start getting the stories out here in the community, It's not like I'm doing this shit on my own or not in the presence of others or I'm imagining it. Can't even say it. It's not like I'm making it up in my head. These are, they're real stories, trust me. So yeah, we turned our attention to the safe because we were fucking chain smoking and we knew that there would have been more smokes and shit in the safe because they can't smoke our contraband or our cannabis or our drugs that get seized or whatever. They have to be put in the safe. So we turned our attention to the safe. Funny story. It took, it would have took half hour to get this safe out of the wall, out of the cupboard, because it was bolted in there and like in it, we had no tools or fucking, nothing to really, we didn't have crowbars and axes and shit like that. We were just using bits of broken chair and we tore like metal frames off the bottom of the desk that held it up and things like that. We didn't have fucking screwdrivers, crowbars and axes, that's for sure. And it took us about half hour to get this safe out of the wall. And I've said this in a couple other videos, like, once I used to get in that elevated state of like, I'll show you sort of thing. Like, don't push me, don't set me off, don't antagonise me, don't make fun of me like when I'm in that like what we were doing right now in a heightened sense, because it will only make me worse. And while we were trying to get the safe out, a couple of the officers are like now taking the piss out of us, going, "Oh, what? You think you're going to get that out of there, do you?" Like taking, so naturally, we're getting, like it's a challenge, like you want to see us get it out of there, do you? It may have taken us half hour to get the safe out of the cupboard, out of the wall, because we can only access the door of it, it's a steel safe. You're not going to just pull the can open, obviously. Once we got it out of there, they were like a bit shocked and they sort of toned down their antagonising and their smart ass remarks. But then after trying to crowbar it open for about 5 minutes, the smart ass remarks come back. "Oh, all that was for nothing, wasn't it? Why don't you just surrender? Oh, you're never going to get into the safe. Just leave it, boys. Come on, pull your heads in," sort of thing. Fuck up. Like, and then one of them, I can't remember what they said, but it was just like, they were basically saying, "He's retarded. Do you actually think you're going to get into that safe with nothing, with no power tools, with your bare hands, basically?" Well, I just lost it. Fucking picked the safe up, jumped up on the, metre and a half off the ground, and just told me mates to stand back. And I kept, I was holding it so it was flat. The door opens that way. It's about, a foot and a half wide, 3/4 of a foot high, like the door bit at the front. And I just kept fucking, we cleared the space on the ground, concrete floors with, thin ass carpet on it. And I just kept going and just pegging it down to the ground as hard as I could so that it'd land flat on the ground, from height with as much force as I could generate. Probably 5 goes in. Boof! Medication, knives, contraband, you name it. Shit went flying everywhere. Busted the fucking safe open. You can imagine us. We are like, we were practically kissing and cuddling. We were that excited that we just smashed this safe open with our bare hands just by pure aggression, and some cunt saying, "Yeah, you can't do it. You're never going to get into it. Grow up, pull your head in, surrender." What? Anyway, we obviously took all the medication, smoked all the cigarettes, everything that was in there. We had a couple of shivs now, whatever. But back to the moral, this is the reason I do these videos, back to the moral of the story. At this point, we're obviously, as much as we're elevated and opening that safe got us even more elevated, we've been in there about an hour by now, and we've been told 1,000 times over, because there was no management, there was no senior staff there. Yeah, there was supervisors and unit coordinators and shit like that, but back then, they were the cunts that were happy to let you get your fucking guts kicked in, cuff you behind you, cuff your hands behind your back, cuff your feet, and then cuff your feet to your hands, strip you naked and leave you in a fucking cell, rolling around like a turtle for 5 hours, 6 hours, freezing. You're a child, 13 years old, 11 years old, 15 years old. So people that will put children through things like that What do you think they're telling us they're going to do to us, given what we've just done to their office? Using their phones, smoking their cigarettes, fucking overpowering their staff. For an hour straight, there were certain men on the other side of that door looking at us like they were going to kill us. And that started wearing off, obviously, because we knew that if we didn't put ourselves in a position where when that door got opened, we were safe, we were fucked. We were going to get the hidings of our fucking lives. And we knew that. Like, we started acknowledging that once the fucking adrenaline and the excitement of it went away, and we could see the look in their eyes from the other side of that glass, like we'd humiliated them. We had done something that had never been done, like took over an officer's station and then held it captive for an hour, smashed their safe open, fucking... So basically, we all, again, had a conversation amongst ourselves and said, out of the 50 staff that are on the other side of that door, yeah, there was probably 7 or 8 women there. They ain't going to do shit. What, you think they're going to tell 42 men not to fucking bash us after death for what we've just done? Absolutely not. They'll tread on your head while they're bending your legs up to the back of your head. Like, there used to be some fucking scum that worked out there. And I'm not saying that we weren't scum. I'm not saying they were more scum than we were, because that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying you don't employ people that will willingly flog fucking children that are clearly mentally unwell, don't have strong family bonds, and have mental illnesses and have things wrong with them and are unable to deal with their own, like, the life they have. So, like, yes, although we put ourselves in that position, the fact that there was 40 men on the other side of that door just rubbing their hands together to fucking hurt us for what we'd done, do you think that taught us any lessons? I spoke about this in the Throw the Rock story. Do you think that after we just done one of the most severe incidents in that detention centre's history, do you think that if we'd have come out of there and they'd have just fucking flogged us 7 ways from Sunday, that would have fixed us or helped us? Of course not. That's how we got to that point. That's how we got to the point of wanting to use more extreme forms of violence to get our way. So, yeah, we all sat down in the corner and had a conversation and basically said, look, as fun as this has been, it's going to come to an end. How it comes to an end is what we need to decide. And, you know, thankfully we were all smart enough to make the decision to get back on the landline and call management. We just called, because all the numbers are on the table on a, like, laminated thing. And I won't say this woman's name, but there was one woman who worked there. I've talked about her in podcasts in the past. Like, she was someone that was the only person to all 3 of us, and especially me, that had ever shown absolute common decency. No matter what I said, no matter what I'd done, she was the one person that was able to reason with me on an interpersonal level. Interpersonal is like, why do you feel like this, Kane? Does your family come and visit you? Do you have phone calls with your mum or your dad? Or, you know what I mean? Like, she would ask questions that would take you out of your little bubble of being in a detention centre, wanting to be a criminal, and she would try and understand how you are, who you are, and why you are where you was. And once we realised that her number was on there, we quickly called. And someone else answered, but we basically said, we're going to fucking set fire to this office if you don't get her on the phone right now. And within 10 minutes, she was on the phone. We spoke and basically begged her to come down to the unit. She said she couldn't because of what was happening, and, you know, obviously they were going to try and force it. There was a lot of things going on. She was senior management. She couldn't just come down to a small unit where we were fucking laying siege on the office, threatening to set fire to it, all these things. But ultimately she did, she come down and was based outside the unit, I believe, and you can see into the units, and that was the deal that we made. We agreed that if she was present, we would surrender. So long as we didn't just surrender in front of her, they split us all up, take us to ourselves, and the moment she's not present, we're getting our fucking guts kicked in. Because that's what would happen. And did happen anyway, days after, for other reasons, but, like, that's irrelevant. So we ended up surrendering, and going back to our cells, they obviously stripped our cells bare. We had nothing but fucking suicide blankets and the clothes we had on. And yeah, we were locked down for, well, me, I went on 10 weeks or something, being locked in a cell 23 and a half hours a day. The others got out a little bit sooner than me just because of their behaviour while on the lockdown. It was little bit better than mine, but yeah, like we were all locked down for months ultimately for what we did, and punished severely for it, because any time, as I said, during the lockdown we were still carrying on over other things, and that was obviously a green light for them to come in and just fucking restrain you and flog you for what you did 2 weeks prior. But anyway, this is the moral of the fucking story, and the point that I always want to make, will make when I tell these kinds of stories. Someone has to always be, how do you say it? Like they have to be, fuck, I can't even think of the word. You have to be thinking outside the box is what I'm trying to say. Out of those 40, 50 staff that were there, not one of them, before, during, or after, asked us why we were doing it. How did we find ourselves in this position, boys? What's making you want to set fire to a room that you're locked in? Like, you know what I mean? Don't you? Wouldn't you ask that of a child? Like if there's a child locked in a small room with enough stuff to burn the building down, stacked up in the middle of the room, and they're literally holding a flame at the bottom of shit that's highly flammable, don't you think they would be the first questions you'd be asking? Not telling you what they're going to do to you once it's all over, if we live through it, that is. Don't you think they, like it's not fucking rocket science, they would be the first questions you ask, wouldn't they? As I said, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a counsellor, I'm not a social worker, and I don't work with the most vulnerable children in our state. I was that vulnerable child. So to be able to sit here now and think back about these things and go, how did not one of them actually think, fuck, these kids are unwell, and if we don't do something right now, not during the incident, but like during our time in the detention centre, who are they going to become? What are they going to do later in life? Like, that, to me, that's common sense, isn't it? I don't know, I'm confused. No, I'm not confused. I think back to these things, and like I said, the feelings and the way my heart goes when I talk about certain things, like smashing that safe then. That was, when that safe come open, that was the proudest moment of my time in Ashley's. And to think back now, telling that story, I'm just like, I don't know how I felt so happy about doing something that I knew was going to get me another 30-second beaten on top of the fucking 3-minute beating I was already going to cop. Because that's how it sort of worked. Everything that you did wrong, yes, you'd be charged with it, with a no action offence. Oh, no further action. Yeah, an NFA, no further action offence, which just meant it was documented, you didn't get in too much trouble for it, you weren't stripped of any privileges or locked down. The next was a MI, minor incident. And the third was a DO, a detention centre offence, which you would be severely punished for, and if not charged by the police externally, which we was, obviously, after the thousands of dollars damage we caused and the assaults on the start, all the rest of it. But, yeah, like, for me, it's just like, that again, that is one incident that all three of us we have taken part in countless incidents like, not like that, but where there's been serious violence, serious criminality, serious mental health issues going on for someone to do the things we were doing over and over and over and over again until we were all sent to jail, or got out and then were sent to jail. So, you know, it's hard to sit here and say, like, you know, yeah, at the time we were some of the state's worst youth offenders at 15 and 16 years old. The tragedy of this story is that all three of us went on to be the state's worst adult offenders. Some of the state's worst adult offenders. And I'm not going to sit here and go on about crimes, but like, an array of crimes that like anyone with half a fucking brain would have known based off our behaviour just on this one day. Even if we'd just spontaneously done this and had been excellent up until it, you'd still have to ask the question, what's wrong with these kids? Why are they doing this? But yeah, it's just, for me, it's mind-blowing. And it makes me a lot happier to know that the detention centre especially is run and operated in a much safer, dignifiable way than it used to be, where staff and detainees are held accountable for their actions. There is no ongoing systemic issues that can change a person's life forever. Their decision making, their core beliefs, their values. It's more of a rehabilitational place now than it ever was when we went there. That is for certain. Most people that now work there based off the history of the place and the history of its incidences and the things that have been reported on and so on, most people now that go out there and apply for jobs, they are there for the right reasons. That's a big difference between when I was going through there and now. So between 2000 and 2007 but compared to now, 2025, it's a much different place. And I'm not saying it's perfect. I don't know its day-to-day, things, but it is much better on a much greater scale than you can fathom than what it was when we were going through there. Hence the reason when I was going through there was sometimes upwards of 60 plus detainees in there from all ages. Me being the youngest at 11, people up to 21, 22, all being housed together, socialising with each other, locked in cells of 8, and I'm 11 years old and I'm in there with people that are 18 plus. Come on. Fucking use your brains. But anyway, it's a much better place now, and it really makes me feel a lot better about telling these stories and trying to educate the next generations to come and the ones that are here now that is no life. It's painstaking for me to accept that I don't think there's much, and especially because I acknowledge the kind of people that were running the place and had control of the place, the day-to-day operational shit more so, there's really not much people with that kind of behaviour, intellect and moral compass can do to help children. That's the fact of the matter. Whereas now it's a lot different. The people that are out there are much better trained. They are much better tested and vetted for their eligibility to be allowed to work with our state's most vulnerable children. And, there's a lot more systems put in place. There never used to be cameras out there when I was out there. It's a much better run facility now. And for that, I'm grateful because people's children are in there. Other people's children are in there. So, again, these stories aren't about being me and my mates were the baddest. Because at the end of the day, you can take that B and replace it with an S. Me and my mates were the saddest. We didn't get visits from our family. They didn't call us. When we called them, all they wanted to do was tell us it was our fault we were there, that we should stop complaining and sooking and just get out and make better decisions. We were the saddest kids in there. We were the ones that had the less support by family. We were the ones that had the worst trauma, things that had happened to us when we were younger coming through the detention centre or earlier on in life before even going there. We were the ones that felt like we had no other options or was incapable of making better decisions for whatever reason. Everyone's reasons are different. All three of our reasons for being in that room together at the same time were dramatically different. We obviously didn't grow up at the same end of the state. We obviously had different family dynamics. We obviously were all mentally unwell in terms of we needed medication and should have been taking medications of some kind. But I just want people to understand that's a tragedy, again, it comes back to me thinking about those 50 faces that were on the other side of them windows and doors when we were in there threatening to basically commit suicide if we set fire to that fucking shit on the floor and the things that we were doing. And yet not one of those people could we trust enough to say, are we going to be okay if we open this door? After what we've just done, I accept that there's got to be punishment. But do you think belting us, choking us, screaming at us, leaving us in what they used to call time-out cells, a blank concrete cell with freezing cold walls and floors, do you think ripping us out of that room and handcuffing us behind our back and then handcuffing your feet to your hands so that you're like that, and then cutting all your clothes off you and throwing you on a freezing cold cell floor for 6 hours is going to cut it? Do you think that's how you address children that are behaving that way? Like, it's weird, it's not weird, it's sad. When I first seen the ABC story on the young gentleman who is now doing extremely well for himself out here in the community on the mainland, when I seen the ABC story, how they treated the children up there when they would start carrying on or be restrained or have to be removed from cells. I don't know if you remember seeing it, the Dondale Detention Centre. They used to put the kids in a chair and their hands would be strapped to there, and they'd be like just sitting there like that, and they'd have what they call a spit mask over them so you can't spit on the staff or whatever. This isn't taking anything away from the fact that that is inhumane and you should not do that to a child. But if I had the choice of having my hands cuffed behind my back and then cuffed to my feet and having my clothes cut off me so that I'm naked, being left on a freezing cold concrete floor in the middle of Deloraine where it's already freezing, mate, bring that chair in every day of the week. I'll sit in that, thanks. And again, that's not taking anything away from the young people that got put in that chair, because that would have been just as horrible as being on that concrete floor when you're the one going through it. But yeah, it's this shit's powerful for me, I won't lie, because although I've done podcasts and I've talked about my life in other aspects, I could never sit here and do this because of the substances and the drugs that were still in my system. I didn't have the ability to feel the emotions that I feel now. I wasn't politically motivated. I wasn't goal orientated. I didn't want to, I didn't have the, it wasn't that I didn't want to, I didn't have the ability to try and help other people in a real way, like by demonstrating and leading by example and talking about my own experiences in an educational way, not just sharing a story for people to go, oh, wow. You know what I mean? It's not about that. For me, I want to see every kid in in our detention centre right now. I want to see them back at home with their families. I want to see them never make it to jail. I want to see them break the generational cycles that clearly show if you go to Ashley's once and jail, you're nearly guaranteed to go there twice. They're statistics. And anyone that's had a child go there, ask yourself, have they been back there a second time? Absolutely. And to me, that's crushing. Like, it'd be hard, I couldn't live with myself if my child ended up in a detention centre. I'd be distraught. I really would. Like, it makes me want to cry saying it. So for all the parents whose children are in there, this is who that video is for. It's not about me sharing some mad story about what we done in there. It's about trying to help people acknowledge that they're children at the end of the day. We were children. We weren't adult age criminals that were consciously making severe decisions and serious decisions. Yes, we knew what we were doing, and yes, we made those decisions, but we are children still. Children can be taught, guided, mentored, and changed. Once you get to the point, it took me 21 years of offending and drug use to stop going and being institutional. I was institutionalised. That's the fact of the matter. I received 36 consecutive custodial sentences by the time I was 30. So more sentences than years I'd lived. If it wasn't for the Supreme Court, the Honourable Justice Robert Pearce giving me, and we'll call it the benefit of the doubt, because let's be honest, if you've got 38 custodial sentences consecutively because you can't be sentenced to community correction orders, you can't be given a suspended sentence where you'll get out into the community sooner than you should, if you can't be given home detention, if you can't be given an alternative sentence, so you have to be given 38 consecutive custodial sentences, what's the likelihood of and especially if you're in the Supreme Court for the 38th time, or 37 custodial sentences, consecutive custodial sentences, the 38th sentence I received was a drug treatment order, community-based drug treatment order where I would serve it in the community. That was 4 years ago, and I'm still here. That speaks volumes of how when someone takes a second to sit back and go, right, what's the alternative? What alternative do we have? I truly believe if he'd have sent me back to jail, I'd still be sitting here now, but, you know, God knows what would have happened during that 2 or 4 years jail that may have changed how I felt about my drug use and all these sorts of things coming back out. But my point is this, he was you know, like I'd like to say intelligent. He was extremely intelligent by giving me that community-based order because it changed my life. It made me realise, even after that second siege, that I had done some of the most horrible, unthinkable, taxpayer-costing things to this state, and yet someone who's got absolute intelligence, judges and magistrates have to be smarter than everyone that comes before them because they have to think of every outcome, possibility, hypothesis, and scenario possible in every case that's put before them, because people come and lie and make things up and all these things. So when he was sitting there looking at my life and my history in the court system, he even said it in my comments on passing sentence. He outlined that I had not once been given the benefit of a community-based order. So how was the courts or anyone else to know or say or determine whether or not it would help, whether or not it would change me, whether or not I would succeed on that order, if I'd never been given the benefit of trying to serve one? Like, again, it's not rocket science. Yes, it was a big risk. The last 2 times I'd been to prison was for standoffs with police, one for 6 hours, one for nearly 12 hours. Of course, it was a big risk saying, okay, you've been in jail 12, 15 months for what you've done. However, you're about to be sentenced to another 2 to 4 years. You can either serve that in jail and come back out just like you have 37 other times and keep repeat offending, be a repeat drug user and all these things, or I can sentence you to a community-based order where you have an array of conditions that you need to abide by. Otherwise, you don't need to commit a crime to serve this time. You simply don't abide by the conditions that I've placed on you out of the benefit of doubt that you will do the right thing and fulfill them, or you'll just go back to jail. Here I am. So, it's crazy, and I want to thank the Honourable Justice Robert Pearce for that because it changed my life. And, you know, I like to think that I lead by example now. I preach and spill my guts to anyone that will listen about how much and how long and how hard it was to be sitting here right now. So, and for that, I have the courts to thank, because if they had sentenced me back to jail, I'd like to think I'd still be sitting here doing this. But I think that's an unreasonable conclusion to come to based off my history. But yeah, I've had a couple of people reach out to me since doing all the boxing videos on Snapchat and Facebook and whatnot. And yeah, I just want to say to everyone, thank you for your support and really look forward to seeing you all at the Deloraine Community Centre November 15th. As I said yesterday to a few people, the promoter, Grant Brown, and the other boys that were fighting on the card, I said, I just hope that it's a great show, we all get victories, and that they've got a medic on standby because they're going to do a demolition job on old mate. Everyone have a good day. God bless.